You are listening.
You are listening.
You're listening to
Not Elsewhere.
Not Elsewhere.
Elsewhere
Classified.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Not Also Classified podcast. Today on the podcast, I have Christine Hall from Sterling Global Solutions. Christine, how are you today?
I'm great, Brian. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan, longtime fan.
Now, I'm going to get into the story of how we connected. You ready?
Absolutely. I'm ready.
And I always pull up my my phone here, and it's a funny story because this is the with people on LinkedIn. Not that to say you're one of those people, but I always get messages from people that reach out to me, assuming that I own a business, a medical practice, some form of technology solutions or something like that. I have I don't know how many employees behind me, and they're looking to outsource. They're looking to, I get a lot of tax people. I get a lot of, basically people who don't know who I am. People who just, I guess, see people who are connected and they just connect right away. And I tend to, how can I say? I tend to play with them a little bit. I tend to play with them a little bit because, I mean, if you're going to, get my attention, I'm going to give you my attention, right? And it better be correct. And so, speaking of, your how we connected, I'm going back to the message. I'm going back to, what was the date? November 27th, 2020. And you started the letter or the message. I don't know. Did I connect with you or you connect with me?
I think I connected with you and you accepted the
yes,
connection.
yes. So you connected with me, and I always get, it's great when people, when they connect with me, they send me a message, right? And I'm like, okay, this is my time to connect with them and let me, if it's genuine or not. So here we go. Let me read this. November 27, 2020 at 4:45 p.m. Yeah, I still got it. Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for connecting with me on LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan. Please do me a favor and follow my company page, so and so, whatever.
Yeah.
To see events. Okay. All right. So when I read it, I'm like, oh, wait. Who is it? Tony. And so again, this is where I play around. I'm like, all right, I don't know if I had an idea it was a mistake, but I wanted to see how you would react. With what my response is, I put down, not too sure who Tony is. Maybe you have connected with the wrong person.
And by that time, I was mortified. So I tried very hard to send a little message, thanks for connecting. And that's genuine.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
I felt the genuine, yeah.
And I try to put everyone's personal name in it because I like getting something that says, hey, Christine. And I don't know what was going on that day. I did not change your name.
Yeah.
And I have never done it again. But it was like the only person that I didn't want to make that mistake with, because I really am a fan.
Yeah.
And,
and you reiterated that afterwards.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I know exactly who you are. I'm so sorry. So but I don't make that mistake anymore. I double check before I hit the send button. So lesson learned.
Good. I mean, it's not that you made the mistake. I've actually made that mistake myself. When I first started this podcast, one of the things that I did to promote the podcast, the first episodes, was to go to different Facebook groups. I went to different LinkedIn groups. And as soon as the first couple episodes hit, I would create this template, the same thing you did, the episode, the description, whatever it may be. And I seriously, hundreds of groups, I would just send them all out, just spending my time just, lining up all the groups in a row in my tabs, and then just going one next, copy paste, one next, copy paste. And so I try to as you would say, personalize the template and to make it seem like genuine, right? And so
Right.
and so when you're trying to do it really fast, I would say, oh, hey, AAPC, so, certain
Yeah.
location. Oh, this name of group. Hello, geeks. Welcome, check out my podcast, that type of thing.
Yeah.
People from Actors, hey, check out my podcast. And so there was a point where I was just like, in the zone, but then at some point I just stumbled and just started, I don't know, switching names, switching groups, and I just, it was just a mess. So I feel for you, but I thought it was funny that you called me Tony. But the thing is that I was gonna say, my brother-in-law, his name is Anthony, so I'm like, okay, maybe she knows my brother-in-law. I don't know.
I don't think I know but it's a small world, so I'm not going to rule that out.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you on. I know I will plug Stacy's podcast. You recorded a very long conversation, 3 hours with Stacy Buck on her podcast. So please make sure to check out. I think part 1 was just released. You have 2 more parts. I've never heard of that, where there's it's split into 3 parts. So it must be a very long and lengthy, interesting conversation.
Well, she and I are friends. So
okay, good.
When you get 2 girlfriends together
Yes.
and they start talking, it just goes. And Stacy's a great talker, and I'm a great talker. And so it's just natural. It was so much fun doing that with her.
Yeah, let me tell you, when 2 people have, what I notice in podcasts is when 2 people have good chemistry, they create great content. What I watch, I do watch a lot of, as I always mention, comedians, right? So when comedians have their solo podcast, they don't do too great, right? They even admitted my numbers are not that great. But if I combine myself with another comedian, and they have this certain chemistry, there's one that I listen to, is called Bad Friends, and they just bicker and fight and make fun of each other for like a whole entire hour. But it's great because you see the chemistry, and they try to do all of that. So I mean, hey, you 2 ladies might have a podcast together later on down the line. You might want to think about that, especially with the chemistry. And that's the thing. It's great when you have somebody to bounce off ideas. And for people who are wondering, the difficulties of interviewing, it does take some time, and trying to develop that chemistry. Because people ask me, or people tell me, oh, you did great on the podcast. Well, yeah, I mean, it took 4 years. If you listen to me in the beginning, it was very hard to catch the conversation, if that's how I want to call it, where you want to try to, listen. That's number 1. And then take notes as you're listening. And then at the end, for those who are wondering what the trick is you listen and then you reiterate. You reiterate what the person said, and then as the host, you move on to the next question, and then you just repeat. It's just it just flowed very naturally. But what's funny is now I apply it when I meet people, and if there's a certain silence, I will take back what they said the last thing that they mentioned, and I just ask a very simple question that allows.
So your dog went to the vet last week. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. Get them talking. I think that's the goal. Like my kids would look at me because when they meet new people, they're just, very, very sheltered, and they would just like not talk, but they would hear me talk. And my wife is the same way. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She says, you talk to that person. I'm like, okay, all right. What am I, the diplomat of this family?
You are the spokesman for the family.
Like we were at the again, I mentioned that we were in St. Petersburg, Florida, for a half marathon, and every time we're in a hotel, before we leave, my wife says, "Can you ask the front desk for a late checkout, please?" I said, "Can you? Why do I have to do it? Why can't you do it? If you want the late checkout, I just want to go home. If you want the late checkout, why don't you ask?" And just because you have the voice for it. And just turn on your podcast voice and pick up the phone and just
Hi, Can I have a late check-in?
Like, hello, we're in room 1117. I would want to request a late checkout. And they're like, oh, okay, yes, 1 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. And she's like, see, every time you have to do it. So
Well, I'll tell you, I enjoy the face-to-face.
yes,
Like when I'm teaching or presenting, if I'm just looking at my screen, I stumble. I second guess myself sometimes. But put anybody up in front of me,
yeah,
and I'll chat all day long.
that's right.
I'll reiterate things. I'll bring things out. I'm animated, but so I really enjoy that face-to-face, whether it's in person or with the Zoom, with the camera, and because you can feed off of people, like you were saying, that when there's two people together, at least I can look at their body language or their eyes or something that says they're getting it, I'm making sense, or
Right.
that that I don't have to go backwards on it. But that's definitely having somebody to bounce off of is truly what keeps me going.
That's right. Now let me ask this question. I know I haven't even asked the first question yet, but you mentioned meetings, right? So lately I've been getting requests to be a speaker, right? In different areas in Florida, even like I think the last one was in North Carolina. And like I'm itching, like yourself, I'm itching to be in person again.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like the camera and doing a lot of this. It grew into something else like YouTube. But I'm itching to just see people, like see a group of people and just, engage with them. Like I've been an instructor since 2004. So I'm like, okay, I need to see if I say something, I need to look at you in the eye. I'm like, do you get it? Do you get it? Okay, good. And so we'll move on. But are you still doing virtual? Have you done any or scheduled yourself for in-person events lately?
So I have done a few in-person events.
Oh, nice.
I have been speaking repeatedly for the American Portable Diagnostic Association. So I got to go to their mid-year seminar in Chicago this year. So that was great that I got to do that. But I'm doing a lot virtually. I think AAPC and HEMA, they like that because we can come home at night, make dinner, sit down, and then go online, go on Zoom and do our meetings and see each other and those types of things. I think it made things easier with Zoom.
Right.
But like you, I miss being in a crowd. I miss the room. And the bigger the room for me, the better. Yeah. And I miss that and seeing the people sitting there. So I'm looking forward to more in person, but I'm pretty booked. My assistant called me today, as a matter of fact, and she's like, is there a cap on how many presentations per month you feel comfortable doing? And I was like, oh, I didn't know we got to that point in life that we had to have that conversation.
Yeah. So, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah. I think before the pandemic hit, I was geared to go. Like I was ready to, I guess, document it, like bring a camera, like here's what I'm doing. I'm going over here. I'm going to this conference. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm meeting this person. I'm going to do live podcast interviews. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of on the back burner. But now again, I'm itching to do that because I'm like already looking at conferences. I like for example, I almost like asked, can I go to North Carolina? I just want to go. I don't care if it's at a Tuesday. I just, but then I'm thinking, well, my son has, lacrosse, and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I can't do that. I gotta hold myself back. But
we did that last year. I was presenting in Texas at the end of the year, and my husband drove out to Texas and picked me up at the airport. Instead of my connecting flight, he called and he's like, oh, you landed. That's great. Why don't you walk outside? Oh, super. And then we drove and we hit New Orleans for a couple of days. We hit Mobile. We hit, just coming home. He was like, I know you don't have time to take a vacation, but let's take a few days, drive home. Yeah. And, so yeah, I needed to be out. I needed to see things. I needed to do things. I know exactly how you feel right now.
Yeah. Like, okay, I need to get out of, I love Florida, but I need to see something. I need to see something. I need to see like a different scenery, you know.
Right. The
Uh,
leaves change.
yeah,
Something.
like
The mountains in the distance.
like South Florida is just very, it's just very flat.
Yeah.
When you get over here, you know, we mentioned I'm from Polk County, you start to see some
Little hills,
a little
right? The Florida
elevation.
mountains.
Yeah, and then I remember going to Georgia. I'm like, wow, the leaves are great. The trees are so big. It's like, so I'm like, okay, I need that. I need that again. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So thank you for answering that question. I'm like, I'm itching. I need to get out of this. I need to get out of this office for goodness sake. Because
I got my
everybody
new
sees me.
office. So
Yeah. And you have your new office. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll definitely talk about that. All right. So here is finally the first question. Christine, where did you come from and how did you get to where you are today?
So I had a very good support system growing up.
Mm.
And I remember that my dad said, you know, I think I shared this with Stacy too,
Yes.
but I said, you know, Dad, I need to have a car. I need to drive. All my friends have cars. And he says, that's great. Go get a job.
Mm.
And I opened the phone book and the hospital was there, the local hospital. Went there. They had a position for me. And I got it. Like immediately they started talking about procedures and DRGs and, you know, how this all works. And I got it. And I thought, this is so cool. And even as I evolved, every time I transitioned from one position to another position within the hospital setting, I got it. And I thought, oh, this is good. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Maybe I'm too confident in myself. No, I really got it.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went into practice management very young and I got it. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I ended up buying a billing company and I got it. And I understood it. And I was like, this is great. So I bought a billing company in 2000 and it was absolutely amazing. Became certified. I think I became certified before I bought the billing company or right around that time. And then I sold the billing company in 2017 and started teaching and then went into consulting and fell in love with that too. So I've been kind of lucky that as I've gone through this travel, this is my only career. I've never worked in fast food. I'm horrible at restaurants because I don't understand the dynamic. What do you mean you can't seat me? You have all these tables here.
Yeah.
You know, my husband will be like, no, you don't understand this. Shh, don't do that. Don't mess up their process. Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's been a great ride. I love it.
Okay, cool. So you just gave me the abridged version.
Yeah, I gave you the abridged version. I talked to Stacy like the. So let me give you some more information about me. I'm first generation here in the United States. My parents are from Uruguay in South America.
Interesting.
Yep. All of my family is from Uruguay. And I have a few uncles that have spread out from there, and one in France and one in Chile and one in Sweden. And so we're very international family. My mom was a flight attendant for Pan Am, and she retired from NetJets. Uncle Warren Buffett, yeah, his company. Cool. Yeah. That's how we affectionately call him. And so we've just had this different culture in my family. So I was first generation, and my parents came and they worked very hard here, and they taught us that. And I remember being very, very young, knowing from the beginning that I was going to be an entrepreneur of some sort. Oh, nice. If you want that candy bar, mom and dad can't get you that candy bar. They're doing their best here. So you're going to have to figure it out, make it work. And it was great. So when I did start working 16, 17 at the hospital, 18, I fit right in, and hard work wasn't a problem. So I was going to school in the morning, in my high school in the morning, and at noon I got out and went on work release, and I worked till 8 o'clock at night, and loved every minute of it. And college was really easy because I was loving what I was doing, and it was in the field I was working in, and it was so. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah. That's interesting. So you mentioned that you got it, right? You mentioned you get a lot of things. I think this is probably going to be the name of the title of the
I got it.
Yes, right. I got it with Christine Hall. So let me ask this question. What's the first thing, and you can go anywhere within your timeline here. What was the first thing that you got in healthcare?
Reimbursement.
Reimbursement.
Yeah.
So what made it, I guess, like, I guess when you're involved in reimbursement, what was the moment, if you can remember, that made sense? Or how did you, I guess, when you say you got it, how did you get it? Really, if that's the question,
Okay, so let's say
know.
the first position I had was the assistant cashier in the business office. This is 1980 something. So I'm on a big pegboard, and my job is to document all the payments and the denials and the deductibles and how all of that was working. It was a giant spreadsheet that we manually wrote all the information in.
Right.
And I remember when something was applied to the deductible, like immediately I got that concept of, okay, so this is their part of their obligation. And then this is what the payment's going to be. And this is what their financial responsibility is, their 20% or whatever it was. And then I could look at the denials and say, okay, well, why didn't this get paid? Oh, that's why it didn't get paid. And it made sense to me. It was very clear that that was the reason why. Oh, the diagnosis didn't match. Well, of course it didn't match, or the, whatever it was at that time that we were looking at, the puzzle pieces that didn't fit together and caused the denial. I could look at it and I saw the picture, I saw the puzzle, and I could easily put it. And I even questioned a lot of times. I would go to the administrator in the business office and I would say, am I really getting this? Because it just seems like, and they were like, yeah, this is how this whole thing works.
Hey everybody, if you are enjoying the podcast so far, please consider liking this video and also subscribing to the Not Elsewhere Classified podcast YouTube channel so you can be notified for future videos. Also, please check out the Medical Coding Geek YouTube channel, where I also post videos on the medical coding, CDI, and HIM community. Also, check out medicalcodinggeek.com, where we offer a lot of services, including our Facebook groups. You can go to medicalcodinggeek.com/services. Check out our Facebook groups, including Medical Coding Geeks, the RHIT and RHIA exam support group, the CDI network. We have a marketplace where you can sell and buy your books. We also have the CEU hit list. If you're interested in free CEUs, I release a monthly list of free CEUs that I find on the internet. Also, you could follow us on social media. Not Also Classified. Everything is at NEC Podcast. For Medical Coding Geek, it's at MED Coding Geek. You could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and we are also on TikTok. If you are listening to this episode, please make sure to subscribe and rate our show on Apple Podcasts. All the ratings and the reviews help our show get noticed. Also, I wanted to take a moment to promote our partners. You can check them out at medicalcodinggeek.com/partners. They include the Haugen Consulting Group, RadRx, Project Resume, Renowned Talent, and so much more. And of course, you could find me, Brian Cui. My last name is spelled CUI on LinkedIn. So without further ado, let's return back to the show.
And then going forward, working as a practice manager, and again, figuring the whole thing out, figuring how to negotiate contracts with payers. And no, I'm not going to settle for again, at the time, I'm not going to settle for 1990 payment schedule from Medicare. We want to go with the current year, or I want to 10% more. And all of those negotiations, it just made sense. I don't know how else to explain it that way. Other than, some people would struggle with the concept behind it, and for me, I was like, "What don't you get?"
Because I'm trying to figure out how you break things down. That's really where I'm getting at, right? So, like, for example, the way I work, I think we have a somewhat of a similar mindset where you look at a problem and you just mentioned it, the pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the one thing you said is putting the pieces together. But then I think another thing that you probably also do is how does it flow?
Mhm.
Right? How does it flow? How do the pieces flow? How do the pieces of the puzzle flow together? Because whenever I look at things, from there always has to be a beginning, there always has to be an end. And so it's not necessarily a straight line, but there is a path that
Right.
leads to the next area. And if there's at any point, I always relate back to the GI, but if there's some form of obstruction, if there's some form of ulcer, if there's some form of bleed, we have to address that issue.
Right.
And I think that's how you've applied it, at least for the cashier. Because I mean,
Well, I
I don't
also
know.
looked at it personally. Like if I were to get a bill,
Mm,
I need to understand this. Wait a
yes.
minute. Why? Okay, I have a deductible, but why is okay, my deductible is so high, and then here's my 20%. Or if they denied it, well, why was it denied? How would I personally feel this way?
Yes.
Is it the hospital's responsibility to have gotten the referral, or was it where did this break down? Was it the diagnosis how do I fix this so that I don't have to pay for it?
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that mindset of like, if this was my bill or my mom's bill, or how do we mitigate this? And then one step further of how do I prevent this from happening again? So it was never just a one-stop thing. It was always a little bit deeper of, okay, now I understand how this whole thing works. How do we stop it from happening over and over,
Right.
that we won't have to deal with it?
And then we're going to dig deeper. Do you think you're very good at interviewing, I guess, asking questions to yourself that you need to answer? You think so?
I think I am. I think I do ask. I ask a lot of questions.
Were you like that? Were you like that in high school?
I think so. I think I was. But I've always been a problem solver. Like I said, I was even from the time I was young. I want that candy bar. I'm not going to get it from my parents. It's not that they didn't want to give it to me. It's that we were immigrants, and they were immigrants, and So how do I figure this out? What do I need to do, and what's the best way to handle this? So planning and looking at that and making it happen. Figuring out a way. When I was young,
yeah,
they
that's
used
what I'm
to
saying.
have this. They used to have a program called Olympic Book Club Sales, and I found this, and I could go door to door and sell stationery to people, and I got to keep $1 for everything that I sold. So I'd have a goal in mind, like, okay, I want to get this thing, or I need this thing, or maybe it was just I needed the money for whatever it was, and I knew that I had to go door to door. And I had to solve this problem. Not everybody needs stationery. So how do I figure this out? Okay, well, let's think about it. We're coming up on Christmas. Everybody needs wrapping paper. So that would be what I lead with. Okay, Christmas is coming up. Do you have wrapping paper? It'll be here in 6 weeks. 6 weeks, because it was the mail, right? It wasn't like Amazon.
Right. Can you imagine?
Right. And then, working that whole problem, but going through each one of those motions to solve my problem. My problem was I needed the candy bar, or I needed the Walkman, or whatever it was that I wanted so desperately. So how do I make this happen? And how do I make it continue happening? So for me, that started the positive. On the other side, when I got into work, was how do I prevent that from happening? Because every dollar we save in this company that I was working for, or the hospital, or when I went into practice management, every dollar that we save could potentially be a raise or a bonus. And so let's work on that. Let's figure that out.
So when you ask yourself a bunch of these questions, right? As you can see behind me, am I pointing it the right way? Right, this thing here, right? You see it? Is it right here? Gosh, the camera. Okay, this board, right? So when you well, let me start off first, right? At the age of 16, 17, like for example, I have 3 kids, right? And so with what I'm trying to teach them is planning, right? They see the goal in sight, but then when I ask them, what's your plan? I don't know. I said, well, I am not going to figure out that plan for you. The same way, we have the same mindset. I'm Filipino, you're and I well, at least for me, I had to figure it out myself. I was fortunate to to
Yeah.
receive this and that. But then afterwards, I had to figure it out myself. And I'm like, you know what? I think my kids should also do the same thing. I'm not gonna, just do stuff and they're just gonna receive it and then not figure it out. And so when I ask them these questions, they're perplexed. Like, like, what do you mean? Why are you asking me these questions? I'm like, these are the things in life that you have to prepare for. And, like, okay, what is your plan? What is your plan? For example, like, what is your plan for college? What is your, like, I want to know. I just need, like, the same way I'm breaking your breaking your how you think and stuff like that. I want to know how that works. And that's,
Well, I had,
deconstruct them,
we,
deconstruct the process.
right. And I had 5 children.
Mhm.
So, and I survived them all. I shared that with you. They're all grown and they're wonderful individuals. They're all living their best life.
Right.
But growing up from probably about 5, 6 years old, when they started interacting with other people, mine was, what's the solution? So if you came home and you said, I have this homework project, I don't know, what's the solution? How can we solve this problem? Even as they got older, if you were tasked in cutting the grass and I came home and the grass wasn't cut, you better have a solution. Mom, it was raining. I'm going to cut it first thing in the morning. That's the solution.
Yeah.
Never set anything open. And so all of them now are very solution based. They problem solve.
Good.
And I'm the person of last resort.
Okay.
So by the time that I hear about it, probably one of the other siblings is already tattletaled, but they never come to me for the solution because they know that that's going to be my question to them.
Yes.
What is the solution? So same thing in business. Like, what is the solution here? Because, I'm not going to do the definition of insanity. I'm not going to keep doing it that way. What's the solution? So like you say, in your house, that's how we kind of have always been, and not just with my kids, but with my students.
Yes.
With
I was about to say that. Yeah.
Employees, right? I constantly, okay, so you can't get this done for whatever reason. Your computer broke, or you lost your textbook, or your mother, or something, whatever. What's the solution? How do we fix this? And you bring it to me. I'm not going to give you the solution. I can guide you and say, hey, there's a few things in there you might want to consider in addition, but we have to come with a solution.
Yeah. It brings up another point in mind when I used to teach, but I want to get back to the original question that I wanted to ask. And
that's the answer. You're asking me, what did I mean when I got it? Well, I got the solution.
Right.
I figured that whole pattern out.
Right. But you were the way and I went into, you like to ask questions, right? And because you ask so many questions, and I pointed back to the board again, right? How do you keep track of all the questions that you ask yourself, right? Because you say, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. How do you keep track of that all? Is that all mental, or did you have to write everything in a big board?
I have volumes of moleskin books that every year it seems that they last about a year, but I write everything: who I talked to, what my appointment is, what my question was, who was the patient, what was the dollar amount, so I keep things on a pad. The pad looks ridiculous, and you probably would never understand it, my logic behind it, but that's how I kind of keep things focused. And then as the solution comes, I X it off, and I called that one back, or I processed this, or I taught that, or I created this, or solved this problem. It gets crossed off. So moleskin books, as like your board behind you, mine just categorized. And then I have this great ability to think back of what I wrote, and I can see it. So if I have another problem that comes up that's similar to that one, I remember that was last year. Let me go grab my book. It was middle of the year. Let's see if I can find that page. There it is. Let's do that again. That was great.
Yeah. That's I think that's the idea that I was getting at is, the same thing with this podcast, right? I create the podcast to create a portfolio of personal conversations with people that I've discussed with. And so when people come to me like, for example, I'm on TikTok, right? And I do these ridiculous videos, but I get questions from people that ask from TikTok, The recent one that I have that I'm going to do after this, I'm going to do a 3-minute video just to discuss is she says, I'm a senior in high school. I am interested in medical building and coding. And I'm like,
Wow.
what senior loves medical code? Like it just baffles my mind. I'm like, that's what I want to say first. I'm like, really? That's not the first thing that comes to mind when I'm a senior. My kids don't want to be medical builders. I mean, there's a whole podcast on that.
Right. Half my kids wanted to be game programmers. They all wanted to be game programmers or sports heroes. They were all going to play for the NFL or they were going to do X Games. So
yeah, and so what I was going to do is I told her, well, I'm already thinking about it. I said, please reference this podcast episode. Please reference this video. And this is because I've already done it before. I'm able to bring it forward. So that's what I wanted to get at. Now, the other thing that I wanted to move forward with is sometimes questioning yourself, right? And applying it to other people, like, for example, your children, but not with your children, but with other up and coming professionals in the field, right? So what I still do when I initially started the Facebook groups was I saw a lot of groups where people were just posting exam questions or study guide questions, and they would ask, well, what's the answer? What's the solution?
Right.
And I would always jump in and I would say, well, what do you think the solution is? Right. And
if you ask any of my students, Brian, they're going to say, oh, Christine's going to tell you to read the guidelines. You're going to send her a question and ask her what's the answer. And she's going to say, oh, that's guideline. I see whatever,
I would ask them, why? Well, first of all, what do you think the answer is? I could care less if it's wrong. I just want to know what your answer is. And why do you think you're having a problem? Like that is resulting you in asking this question for a quick answer. And so, for some people, they would accept it. Like, okay, I see where he's getting at. But there are people who do not want that. They just want the quick answer, and they get very, very aggravated when I ask these questions. And I would ask more questions after they ask a question, and they just like kind of, okay, adios, buddy, because you're kind of frustrated.
Isn't the old proverb that you can give a man a fish and you feed them for today, but if you teach them how to fish, you fed them for the rest of their life.
That's right.
And so I think there is a little bit of responsibility from as an educator to teach them to fish, and not just coding and billing, but also in life, where you have to continue to look for the answer for things and question it. Why is this the answer? And where did it come from?
Yeah.
And how do I know that this is the right thing? And so I think that's what we both kind of do with students. With those questions is to, cue them to start finding those answers through their own solutions.
Yes. And even through their own mistakes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And the thing is that what you do is, when you ask yourself these questions, I'm trying to teach them to do the very same thing. Like, okay, you have a problem. Well, what's the first question you're going to ask yourself? Well, it could be any question. Don't worry. Because I think what most students and most new professionals have is this idea, like they just don't want to feel dumb, like they just don't want to feel like, okay, I'm, if I answer this question and it's wrong, well, it just makes me incompetent as a professional. I'm like, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
I say the same thing to my students because I give my email out and, please reach out to me. Please ask me if you get a question wrong and the rationale doesn't make sense to you, or if you've gotten that question or that type of question wrong a few times, reach out to me.
Yes.
Because I might have a different way of guiding you down that path. And I probably only get maybe 5 or 6 emails a week. And it breaks my heart. Like, don't struggle. You don't have to struggle. I'm going to guide you, I'm going to show you which part of the maze that you need to go through to get that answer.
Now, I'm very guilty of, at least in work, I did that. And there was one thing that my supervisor told me recently that kind of snapped me out of it. She says, don't suffer in silence. And, I
That's
said,
great.
don't suffer in silence.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
think you can do it by yourself. There's a group of people, you can ask questions. But the thing is with me, that's why I asked, how are you in high school? I never asked those questions, right? I would just kind of like, okay, I think I got it. I think I can figure it. I think it's just the challenge of trying to figure it out on your own, and the satisfaction that you can get it, that you can solve the problem. I think there's a different way of thinking. But when she told me don't suffer in silence, you gotta
Mhm.
swallow your pride,
Yeah,
and kind of,
right.
yeah, just allow
And
yourself, to I guess receive the help that people are wanting to give you in the first place. That's the
but
idea.
to receive learning,
Yeah.
if you're not asking questions, then how do you expect to learn something? It's
Mhm.
some of these things that we do. I mean, coding is a different language.
Yeah.
You have to ask questions in order to learn a different
Mhm.
language.
Yeah.
You have to talk to somebody.
Yeah, no, it was challenging because I always say, when I first started, well, I started out in CDI, but then I
Mhm.
was given the opportunity to do inpatient coding, and I'm like, okay, oh boy. And my previous boss paired me up with an inpatient coder, and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna ask you a bunch of questions. But then I think what I did was different. I just made the mistakes, and then she would catch them all, and then she would just present me with all the mistakes. Here's all the mistakes you did. I'm like, oh, come on. Yeah, you got to redo them over again. I think it's better if you ask me first before before you
But
do
we
all
do
of
learn
these.
from mistakes too. I mean,
Correct.
that's
Correct.
that's the other side of it is we ask questions, but we also learn from our mistakes.
Right.
Some people are harder headed than others. I think I learned at a young age that somebody's already figured this out. I
Mm,
just need to know who to ask the right
right.
questions to, and they're going to tell me how to do it.
Mm, mm,
But not everybody's like that. Everybody's different. I had 5 different kids, and I've had hundreds of employees.
mm.
Maybe not hundreds, but I've had a lot of employees, and that was you can always tell there's a difference. Some of those do like to suffer in silence and make the mistakes, but you have to learn from the mistakes,
Right.
right?
Correct.
And so
Correct.
that's
I think also when you think of the mistakes, what are the consequences of the mistakes? When do the mistakes happen? As a student, when you make mistakes, it's okay. It's not really okay, but if you make mistakes, it affects your grade. But then bottom line, it doesn't really affect the company,
mhm,
So when you apply it over in the professional side, if you make mistakes, it affects your productivity, it affects your
mhm.
quality, it affects your paycheck. So,
And it rolls downhill. It affects the
correct.
next person and the next person. At some
Yeah.
point, it's going to affect more than just yourself.
Yeah, yeah, correct. That's right.
Mhm.
And so you got to think about it, not just from yourself, but then again, the bigger picture, right?
And I've made plenty of mistakes too.
Correct. Yeah.
And again, that's how you learn is by making those mistakes. And hopefully you have somebody there and I have been so blessed to have a lot of good role models and mentors over the course of my life,
Mm,
and professionally as well. So I've had those people that I could say, okay, I totally messed this up. Please help me. Please show me the path to the solution. Right.
right, right. Now
So
I'm interested in what your thought process was when you decided to own your own building company. So what kind of questions, I guess a question, since you didn't go through, you gave me a summary, but I'm going to just pin you in the timeline, like a multiverse type of thing, like boom. Okay. At this point in time, what were you going through? And what made you think you could start a business? Because I'm sure the answer is I got it, right?
of course I got it. Right.
I got it, right? So I'm going to
Well,
start a building business.
okay. So I got it and I don't got it.
Uh,
I was the director of medical records for a skilled nursing facility, doing
okay.
very well.
Mm.
And I had my second child.
Oh, okay.
And I fell in love with this child.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I didn't love the other one, I did too, but I had him very early in life, and I went right back to work 2 weeks after he was born, and that broke my heart. So the
Mm.
second little baby comes along, and I'm madly in love with this baby, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to put him into daycare, and the other one's in daycare,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this was not the plan, and okay, well, let's find a solution. What's the solution? So I'm on maternity leave, maybe a week into my maternity leave, and I went to the unemployment office, and I sat there and I said, I have a job to go back to. It's not that I don't, but I want to know if there's something else out there. What are my options? What solutions are out there that I can do this? The man says, oh no, you really need to stick with your job. So there was a gentleman in the booth behind the little cubicle that I'm in.
Right.
And he stands up and he says, I'm so sorry to overhear your conversation. However, I have another colleague that works in another department whose sister owns a billing company. I don't even know if she's hiring, but I would be happy to send that off, see if we can make a connection. And the connection happened. She called me on the phone and she says, well, I can't even afford to pay you what you're making salary wise, but how about you bring the baby to work with you and you work in between school hours with the other one. And then, at night you can do some things too to make up the time. So I crunched the numbers and it wasn't optimal. However, I was in love with this baby. So you do crazy things when you're in love, right?
MedicalCodingGeek.com